A typical British high street, especially back in the late 2010s and 2020s, feels like a graveyard. Heritage brands are collapsing overnight, shops boarding up their windows, and sitting right in the middle of this was the green and white signage of Marks & Spencer. The general consensus was that M&S had completely lost its way. The clothing department was widely dismissed as frumpy, the stores felt exhausted, and analysts were openly taking bets on how long the company could actually survive. But fast forward to today, and the atmosphere inside those exact same doors is completely unrecognizable. The clothing section is packed with younger shoppers grabbing viral knitwear, the food halls are bustling, and the brand is dominating the conversation on platforms like TikTok. After recently securing the prestigious Brand of the Year title and officially reclaiming the #1 spot in the highly competitive womenswear market, they've proven all the critics wrong. It's a total paradox. How does a brand universally written off as an outdated joke suddenly engineer the most successful turnaround in modern British business history? The short answer is they stopped trying to be something they weren't. The executives simply stopped chasing high street trends and remembered the original blueprint that made the business a national treasure in the first place. Let's dive into it. The story of Marks & Spencer's begins with Michael Marks, a Jewish refugee fleeing the intense anti-Semitism of Russian-controlled Poland in the early 1880s. Local legend suggests he actually bought a boat ticket for New York, only to get unceremoniously dumped off at the port of Hull. Finding himself stranded in a foreign country without speaking a single word of English, he made his way to Leeds and started grinding. He spent his first few years working as a peddler, hauling a massive, heavy wooden box of cheap haberdashery on foot across the demanding, rain-soaked routes between the Yorkshire market towns. Marks eventually secured a permanent stall at the Leeds Kirkgate Market in 1884, but his inability to speak the language was a massive liability in an era where aggressive haggling was the only way to do business. To bypass this problem, he devised a simple operational hack. He hung his peddler's tray around his neck and traded under a clear slogan painted right on the front. "Don't ask the price, it's a penny." Every single item genuinely felt like a bargain for that lone penny, and as a result, customers instantly trusted him. While other merchants wasted time arguing over fractions of a pence for low-quality junk, Marks relied on massive volume, rapid turnover, and unwavering reliability. By 1894, the business was bursting at the seams. Marks had the street-level hustle, but he desperately needed capital and logistical support to actually scale the operation. He found his missing puzzle piece in Tom Spencer, an incredibly sharp cashier working in the local wholesale company I.J. Dewhurst. Spencer had watched Marks routinely clear out their wholesale inventory and knew exactly how profitable the penny stores were. Recognizing a gold mine, Spencer dropped his life savings into the venture, forming the most famous partnership in British retail history. They were the perfect odd couple. Marks drove the aggressive expansion of the penny bazaars across the markets of Yorkshire and Lancashire, while Spencer leveraged his wholesale contacts to secure rock-bottom supply prices and manage the increasingly complex financial books. Together, they brought affordable, dependable goods to a working-class demographic that had previously been completely priced out of the retail market. The partnership generated incredible wealth, prompting Spencer to cash out and retire in 1905 after 11 highly lucrative years. Sadly, the success didn't buy him a long, peaceful retirement, as he tragically drank himself to an early grave shortly after. Michael Marks followed just 2 years later in 1907, having literally worked himself to death building the foundation of the empire. With the founders gone, the highly prosperous company suddenly became a massive target. Rivals immediately began circling the wagons, plotting to break up the business and sell off the highly profitable assets. But they all completely underestimated Simon Marks, Michael's fiercely ambitious teenage son. Simon fought a brutal boardroom war to seize total control of the company and refused to let his father's life's work dissolve. Simon possessed a ruthless retail vision, and realizing that the era of the market stall was ending, he systematically transitioned the business away from the bazaars and built the massive network of permanent physical department stores that would eventually dominate the country. But throwing up brick-and-mortar stores across the country is completely useless without a formula to keep people walking through the doors. Simon understood that long-term dominance relied on hitting a very specific, incredibly lucrative sweet spot, a perfect equilibrium between uncompromising quality and undeniable value. The company never set out to be the absolute cheapest option available, nor did they try to compete with the high-end luxury boutiques. They carved out a massive hybrid lane. When a customer walked through the doors, they knew they were getting a product vastly superior to the discount chains, but at a price that comfortably undercut the traditional department stores. This philosophy dictated every single decision the company made throughout the 20th century. They established exclusive, highly protective contracts with British suppliers to ensure their inventory maintained strict quality standards while keeping supply prices incredibly low. When the company introduced new products, the testing process was famously rigorous. In fact, in 1934, M&S became the very first British retailer to establish a dedicated scientific research laboratory where a team of scientists conducted over 9,000 rigorous tests on fabrics to ensure the items genuinely lived up to the price tag. The approach to food followed the exact same logic. Senior executives attended mandatory tasting sessions at the London headquarters to verify that new grocery items actually tasted significantly better than anything else available on the high street. This obsession with durability and performance defined the brand for generations. A clothing executive pitching a new sweater would routinely turn the garment inside out to demonstrate the flawless quality of the stitching, proving that a jumper was built to last. Following the Second World War, the company invested heavily in emerging man-made fabrics that outperformed traditional natural materials while lowering manufacturing costs. They even leaned into the war effort directly, with the staff raising enough money to purchase a Spitfire. As the British economy improved and the middle class expanded, the business grew right alongside the population's increasing disposable income. They became the gateway for working class families to access better living standards without breaking their tight budgets. For decades, the formula worked flawlessly, culminating in a historic peak in 1997 when CEO Sir Richard Greenbury led the company to report pre-tax profits of £1 billion, making them the first British retailer to ever hit that milestone. But success of that magnitude breeds a lot of corporate arrogance, with Marks and Spencer's completely losing touch with the shifting reality of the high street. They started operating under the dangerous assumption that the public would blindly stay loyal to the brand forever, regardless of how much the retail landscape changed around them. Here's a quick example. As the rest of the world rapidly embraced modern banking, the company stubbornly refused to accept major credit cards. Right up until the year 2001, if you wanted to do a massive grocery haul or buy winter coats for the family, you either had to carry a giant wad of physical cash or use their specific in-house store card, frustrating modern shoppers straight into the arms of competitors who are happy to take a Visa. And as we stated already, Marks & Spencer maintained a philosophy of perfect equilibrium between uncompromising quality and undeniable value throughout the 20th century. But in the late 90s, management slipped. They chased the premium crowd by jacking up prices, and when budget-conscious families walked out, the executives panicked and swung the pendulum to the other extreme by obsessing over rock-bottom discount pricing. This instantly alienated their loyal middle-class shoppers who took one look at this and defected to Waitrose. The damage was even worse in the clothing division. By this time, the global fashion industry was changing at breakneck speed as aggressive new players like Zara and H&M arrived to offer hypermodern trend cycles. Marks & Spencer couldn't keep up, as Zara and H&M could sketch a design and hang it on the shop floor in a matter of weeks, something the red tape and the corporate bureaucracy of Marks & Spencer couldn't accomplish. By the time a single garment survived their clunky approval process and finally arrived in stores, the trend was already dead and buried. So instead of sustained growth following that historic billion-pound peak, profits practically fell off a cliff, cratering to just £145 million in the early 2000s. The company went from acting like an untouchable retail giant to looking like incredibly vulnerable prey. That much blood in the water attracted some serious sharks, like Arcadia Group owner Philip Green, who launched an incredibly aggressive hostile takeover bid in 2004 that Marks & Spencer managed to fend off. The situation steadily worsened over the next decade as the brand dragged a bloated, massively expensive real estate portfolio through a rapidly digitizing world. By 2018, the chief executive at the time, Steve Rowe, finally stopped trying to spin the narrative. He bluntly admitted that M&S had devolved into a top-heavy business that was inward-looking and too corporate. Acknowledging that they were bleeding sales to the internet and no-frills chains like Primark and Aldi, Rowe announced the brutal closure of 100 HighStreet stores. He even publicly threw his own tech infrastructure under the bus, stating, "Our online capability is behind the best of our competitors and our website is too slow." And just when it looked like things couldn't possibly get any worse, the pandemic hit and government lockdowns forced physical retails to shut down entirely. The company recorded a historic £87.6 million loss, completely wiping away a century of prestige and cementing their reputation as a failing, obsolete enterprise just waiting for the final nail in the coffin. But before that final nail could be hammered in, a retail heavyweight, Archie Norman, stepped into the chairman role and initiated a complete overhaul. He took one look at the sluggish corporate culture and tapped Stuart Machin, a man who would eventually rise to CEO, to shock the system back to life. Machin brought an incredibly urgent energy to an executive team that had grown far too comfortable. Having started his career stacking supermarket shelves 7 days a week to help his single mother climb the property ladder, his gritty, working-class background perfectly mirrored the rags-to-riches ethos Michael Marks established all those decades ago. Staff routinely describe Machin as being built fundamentally differently from the executives who came before him, operating with a borderline obsessive focus on the minor details. A recent profile in The Independent, titled "Stuart Machin, We Turned M&S Around," points out that if trousers have a belt loop, he'll know its exact width, stitching pattern, and color tone, and he'll have an opinion about how it can be improved. He happily crashes food review rooms to bluntly tell the culinary team they oversource things and make them too rich. He even bypasses middle management to keep a direct pulse on the shop floor. As the article notes, he is a listener. He answers emails up to midnight, but is not to be messed with. But fixing the internal culture meant absolutely nothing if the British public still thought the brand was a laughingstock. To communicate this massive shift, Machin brought in two marketing heavyweights, Shari Cramond for food and Anna Braithwaite for clothing. Both women grew up in solid M&S households, giving them a lifelong, intuitive understanding of the brand's latent potential. Instead of blindly throwing millions of pounds at trendy ad agencies, they dug straight into the company archives and spoke directly with the millions of lapsed customers who had walked away from the brand. Their ultimate conclusion was simple. The fundamental positioning of the brand was perfectly fine, and the company simply needed to wake up and execute that exact same century-old vision for a modern audience. This meant tackling the biggest fire burning inside the company, the women's wear department. They brought in Maddie Evans from Topshop, eventually promoting her to Director of Women's Wear in 2022. Evans looked at the racks and realized the key to selling clothes is actually designing items that women actively want to wear. She threw out the old playbook that categorized shoppers by age and identified the target customer entirely by their attitude. She defined this demographic as the modern mainstream. This shopper doesn't necessarily want to walk the runway in avant-garde fashion, but she absolutely wants to feel stylish, confident, and relevant when she walks into the office or meets friends for drinks. Evans and her team spotted a clear gap in that premium brands like Arrogance charged steep prices, while fast fashion outlets like H&M sold cheap trends that fell apart after a few washes. Marks & Spencer stepped directly into this void to offer a functional middle ground, the durability of higher-end fashion paired with a price tag that normal shoppers could afford. They delivered quiet luxury staples alongside bolder statement pieces and overhauled their historically slow supply chain to get these new designs onto the shelves faster. Meanwhile, Anna Braithwaite led a review of the entire clothing line. Armed with feedback from over 250,000 customers, the company stopped playing it safe. They brought in third-party brands like Nobody's Child to attract a younger demographic and launched strategic collaborations with public figures like Sienna Miller and Bella Freud. These collections drove heavy foot traffic and even sparked bidding wars on resale platforms like Vinted. But while the flashy collaborations generated a lot of hype, the company also secured their foundational basics. They maintained a historic grip on the underwear department to the point where M&S now sells a bra every 2 seconds, commanding almost half of the entire UK market for women's lingerie. They also became the first major high street retailer to launch specialized Stoma knickers, moving tens of thousands of pairs in just under a year. Through this combination of updated designs, faster logistics, and clever marketing, the clothing division transformed into a highly profitable operation, with women's partywear sales rising by 49% and knitwear sales jumping by 23% compared to the previous year. All this led to M&S facing a new challenge. They had to convince a highly skeptical British public to actually walk back through the doors and look at all the things they've accomplished. To this end, they embraced a corporate metric called effective share of voice, meaning they had to deliberately outshout competitors by dropping massive amounts of cash on high-quality ads to steal back market share. While rival brands wasted time arguing in boardrooms about whether to focus on digital or traditional media, M&S simply chose both and weaponized every single platform at their disposal. They started by bringing all the creative work for the food business entirely in-house, giving the company total control over their messaging. They quickly proved that they could still dominate old-school television by partnering with ITV to launch Cooking with the Stars. The program exploded in popularity, ultimately becoming the most successful ad-funded show in the history of the network. But that was only half the strategy. They completely decentralized their approach to social media. Management actively encouraged staff across their 1,000 retail locations to film and post their own unpolished videos. Almost overnight, thousands of shelf stackers and till workers transformed into a localized army of influencers. This chaotic yet highly authentic strategy pumped genuine personality and humor back into the brand, showing a younger audience that M&S no longer took itself so seriously. Simultaneously, they recognized the undeniable power of nostalgia. They looked at decades of internal data and realized their legendary, sultry food pornography adverts from 2006 were still deeply ingrained in the public consciousness. They brought the iconic campaign back from the dead and updated the delivery by throwing real consumers into the mix and dialing up the humor, perfectly capitalizing on the proven effectiveness of their own history. This constant revitalization of their public messaging successfully protected their century-old positioning while perfectly adapting to exactly what a modern audience expects. But perfectly adapting to a modern audience meant completely rethinking where customers actually spent their time. The traditional high street department store was great for a massive weekend shopping trip, but consumer habits had shifted. The modern shopper was increasingly time poor, actively prioritizing pure convenience and immediate gratification over almost everything else. To capture this rapidly moving demographic, M&S executed a logistical masterstroke. Back in 2005, the company inked a landmark partnership with BP. They placed compact, highly curated food halls directly onto petrol station forecourts with premium sandwiches and luxury ready meals right in front of millions of hurried commuters who lacked the time to navigate a massive supermarket. The strategy was a complete success, expanding at breakneck speed to roughly 300 sites across the country and shattering the grim British stereotype of the miserable, stale petrol station sandwich. Suddenly, M&S was dominating the market for instant lunchtime gratification while simultaneously rescuing exhausted commuters who needed a premium dinner on the drive home. The operational blueprint was so flawlessly effective that BP actually used the M&S model as the foundation for their entire global retail strategy, proving that merging premium groceries with high-traffic real estate is an unstoppable force. While they were busy conquering the nation's petrol stations, they never lost sight of their true home on the high street. The ultimate culmination of this massive operational shift is now fully visible right inside the physical stores. The company is actively transforming their retail spaces to ensure the big family shop feels like a premium experience, blending the authentic soul of a fresh market with the ruthless logistical efficiency of a massive supermarket. They're also rolling out entirely new formats, like a boutique-style branch at Battersea Power Station focused purely on curated holiday clothing and beauty. And in a massive statement of intent, they even secured government approval to knock down 3 buildings to entirely rebuild their flagship store on Oxford Street from the ground up. After 13 consecutive quarters of growth, the financial markets have completely surrendered to this turnaround. They achieved the retail holy grail by creating an environment where mothers and daughters actively want to shop together. They proved to the entire industry that a heritage brand can survive a near-death experience by stripping away corporate arrogance, deeply understanding the modern customer, and relentlessly focusing on the product itself. They won the battle by refusing to compromise on the twin coordinates of quality and value, successfully burying their frumpy reputation and re-establishing themselves as a national treasure. But what do you think? Are you one of the millions who rediscovered the clothing section this year, or do you still strictly visit for the food hall? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. We want to hear about the best item you've picked up from the new collections. And genuinely guys, I do love reading all your comments, except maybe the AI accusation ones, so do leave them below. But anyways, if you enjoyed this deep dive into retail history, give us a like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next video. Anyways guys, cheers for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.